Acrocanthosaurus, the high-spined lizard. An apex predator, and a good one at that. They have a great sense of smell, so if you ever find yourself trapped in the Acrocanthosaur enclosure, and I certainly hope you never do, I don't recommend playing hide and seek. They'll sniff you out before you can clean your trousers. Each side of its upper jaw sports 19 razor-sharp teeth, but I don't recommend getting close enough to count them all. This is an Archaeopteryx. Its fossil was one of the most important scientific discoveries ever made. Not only was it the first feathered dinosaur found, but we now know its colours were mostly black and white, much like a magpie. Now, I've seen skeletons of Argentinosaurus before, but nothing can prepare you for the sheer immensity of this dinosaur in the flesh. These titanic sauropods, fittingly called titanosaurs, grow rapidly. Once they reach a certain size, they're virtually untouchable and have nothing to fear from puny apex predators. Hungry guests, though. Let's hope we don't find out. Hatchlings are absolutely puny by comparison. Without the protection of enormity, young Argentinosaurus are extremely vulnerable, so adults compensate by having as many babies as possible to increase the chances that one of them will reach adulthood. Quantity over quality. You can't get a much more classic dinosaur than Brachiosaurus. This is the iconic high-browsing sauropod, feeding on nutritious leaves and branches way up in the trees. These beautiful creatures can eat around 400 kilograms per day, so I better go check to see if our latest food delivery arrived on time. If not, we might have a bit of a problem. Brachiosaurus is a sauropod, a type of herbivorous dinosaur with a tiny head at the end of a long neck. The largest animals to ever walk on land were sauropods, but not all of them were so gargantuan. For instance, Europasaurus grew just over 6 meters long, which, to be fair, is still very large. There it is, Camarasaurus, the star of the Morrison Formation. Fossils of Camarasaurus are some of the most common remains found in the Morrison. Luckily for us, that means we have a wealth of information to work with, including what it ate and even how it laid its eggs. One of the reasons this animal is so common in the fossil record is the sturdiness of its blunt skull. Looking at it more closely, I can sort of see how that could be the case. Wouldn't you agree? Now that, my friend, is a beautiful dinosaur. Almost like a musical instrument, Parasaurolophus used their crest for long-distance communication. The crests are made out of bone riddled with hollow tubes, which help amplify that beautiful singing voice of theirs. You're listening to the first orchestra on Earth. The woolly rhino, or Coelodonta, is a relative to the modern-day Sumatran rhino. Much like its contemporary, the woolly mammoth, this rhino inhabited what is now called the Mammoth Steppe, a vast cold grassland that extended from Western Europe to the most remote corners of Siberia. By bringing this animal back to life, we honour that wonderfully diverse ecosystem, now lost to the ages. Not unlike modern species, this rhinoceros sports two horns on its face. A key difference to note, however, is its unusual flattened shape. That's truly unique among its peers. Now this is an interesting fellow. This dinosaur is called Deinocheirus, a name meaning horrible hand. Its hands aren't actually horrible, mind you. Calling dinosaurs things like terrible or horrible is a trend that goes all the way back to Sir Richard Owen, who first coined the term dinosaur, which of course means terrible lizard. First discovered as a giant pair of arms, we now know that Deinocheirus resembled a huge humpbacked goose roaming the marshy wetlands of prehistoric Mongolia. A Dryosaurus. Quite elegant, don't you think? They're especially cute as babies when they have big eyes and stubby noses, just like a puppy. They originally inhabited forested areas of the late Jurassic, with their name literally translating to tree lizard. I wonder if they bark. Found all over western North America, Edmontosaurus is the textbook definition of a hadrosaur. They're one of the most well-studied animals in the fossil record, providing us with a wealth of insight into how they ate, socialised and survived. Iguanodon, one of the first dinosaurs to be formally named. Iguanodon is also one of the first dinosaurs to be sculpted. The original sculptures can still be seen in Crystal Palace Park in London. The artist behind the sculptures, Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins, famously hosted an 8-course dinner inside one of the incomplete sculptures on New Year's Eve, 1853. How's that for a party? This creature's restorations weren't always perfect, though. See those thumb spikes? They were once thought to be nasal horns, sort of like an iguana's. Very wrong, of course, but A+ for name inspiration. Lambeosaurus, a crested hadrosaur from the late Cretaceous. Like others of its kind, it uses its unique hatchet-shaped crest as a sort of resonating chamber. Though not essential, it's also great at giving a thumbs up. In my opinion, the most interesting thing about hadrosaurs isn't the presence or absence of a crest, but the way they move. They're able to walk as bipeds or quadrupeds as the situation demands. A rare feature in the animal kingdom. At last, the Woolly Mammoth, ruler of the Ice Age, then ruler of none. There's nothing quite like it on the planet today. It's not going to be easy caring for these elephants. But luckily, there's a lot of research we can reference as we try to keep them fit and healthy. They represent so much of what we've set out to do, so we can't disappoint the world now. Just like their closest elephant cousins, mammoths are highly social, forming large family groups led by matriarchs. So that means we need to make sure we give them enough company. I would hate to see them feel lonely. This handsome little fella is one of my personal favourites, the microraptor. I've always wanted to hand feed one, but I don't want to chance one of these feisty creatures mistaking my finger for a tasty lizard. Actually, I just need my old falconry gloves. Wow, look at the horns on that one. This must be Todas, a ceratopsian best identified by its large cow-like features. Much like a rhino or, well, a cow, its horns are sheathed in keratin, the same material that makes up scales, feathers, fingernails, and even hair. That huge head can grow 1.5 meters long from tip to tip. That's 1/3 of its body length. Ah, a pachyrhinosaurus. My, that head looks heavy. Thankfully, the frill extending off the back of its head is hiding a secret. There are 2 large holes punched straight through the bone to relieve the weight of all those adornments. The holes aren't visible during life. As you can see, they're beneath all that skin and keratin. There are 2 large holes punched straight through the bone to relieve the weight of all those adornments. The holes aren't visible during life. As you can see, they're beneath all that skin and keratin. There are 3 species contained within the genus Pachyrhinosaurus, each with their own unique facial characteristics. There are 3 species contained within the genus Pachyrhinosaurus, each with their own unique facial characteristics. Now that, my friend, is a beautiful dinosaur. Almost like a musical instrument, Parasaurolophus used their crest for long-distance communication. They didn't use their tube-shaped crest as a snorkel, contrary to previous hypotheses. Nevertheless, I quite like the mental image of a Parasaurolophus going snorkeling. Protoceratops. This animal is one of the smaller species of ceratopsians, living alongside deadly neighbours like the velociraptor. Oddly enough, this animal lacks a lot of the more complex facial features seen in larger family members, like a certain 3-horned celebrity. Now this little fella is a Psittacosaurus. Just looking at its face, you might not realise that this was one of the first ceratopsians. It may lack a frill and forward-projecting horns, but you can still see the resemblance in its strong beak and its cheek horns. Oh boy, that's a big kitty. More commonly known as the saber-toothed tiger, Smilodon makes for a formidable predator. Despite the looks, Smilodon isn't closely related to any modern cats. It's more accurately called a machaerodont, although I wouldn't worry too much about making the distinction. Just try to keep those saber teeth away from the guests. With a head like that, we must be looking at Styracosaurus. The purpose of these gorgeous frills has long vexed paleontologists. Were they primarily for display, temperature regulation, or neck protection? Now that we have one in the flesh, hopefully we can solve this mystery once and for all. The fossil record shows a bone bed of what was assumed to be a herd of these animals. But from what I've found, they're far more antisocial than expected, perhaps a result of modern climatic conditions or irregularities in the genome. I'll leave that up for you to decide. There it is. The one and only king of the tyrant lizards. Tyrannosaurus is as big as the movies, and yet somehow even scarier. Take a good look at those arms. Each arm is a metre long, can hold almost 200 kilos, and ends in razor-sharp claws, far from the wimpy little stubs most of the public makes them out to be. Ah yes, the Torvosaurus, an apex predator of the Jurassic. Its sleek profile made it a formidable foe for even the biggest of prey items. If you want my advice, it's best observed from a safe distance. Triceratops, one of the most recognizable and largest dinosaurs of its kind. Having lived alongside predators like the T-Rex, those giant horns start to make a lot more sense. Now, let's not mix the two together. Several fossilized Triceratops have been given nicknames, like Lane, Hatcher, or Homer. Personally, I prefer names starting with T. T-Rex has the most powerful bite force of any land animal on the planet. And if those massive jaws weren't threatening enough, you know it could swallow you and me both in one go. This is a creature of pure instinct, so let's hope it doesn't try to take back its kingdom anytime soon. Although it doesn't have a magnificent bony crest like its more famous relatives, some Edmontosaurus sport their own flashy headgear in the form of a comb made entirely from soft tissue.
Si te ha molado el vídeo, dale a like, comenta qué te ha parecido, suscríbete, pásate por mi Instagram para enterarte cuando subo vídeos y mírate estos dos, que seguro que te flipan. ¡Adiós!